Rachel Maddow, it's a pleasure to welcome you to On the Coast today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're one of America's most prominent journalists, prominent voices. And given the tensions between our countries right now, just what are you reflecting on right now in advance of your trip here to Vancouver?
Well, I am. It's a good question. My mom's Canadian. I feel a real kinship with Canada through my mom and through my extended family. But right now, as an American traveling abroad, I feel like we have a lot to answer for. We picked this government, we picked this president through a free and fair election, and the people of this country and all the other institutions of this country, I think, sort of have a responsibility to try to make sure the rest of the world really knows what's going on, and also to know that our government isn't our whole country, and that there's a lot going on in the United States, in U.S. politics right now, about people trying to figure out a way to mitigate a lot of the harms that are being caused by our president. And I'm hoping to talk about that and also hear from Canadians in Vancouver about your ideas for what we can do to try to clean up some of this mess we've got.
Well, again, you've said that again and again, the importance of listening, not just talking. Why is that important to you?
Well, I think it's important in life. I think it's also important in the media. You know, with your work at CBC, with my work at MS Now, all of us are in this privileged position where we get to speak into a microphone and have lots of people hear us. Anytime we have the opportunity to make it a two-way conversation, I think it's more valuable. I'm really looking forward to speaking with students, for example, at UBC, before the event next week, and to take questions both from the moderator I'm going to be on stage with, but also from people in the audience. I sort of feel like I'm all ears. We Americans right now, particularly Americans who are opposed to what's happening in our government, I think need all the best ideas we can get from anywhere. So it's important to be listening now more than ever.
You know, we talk often amongst our own team, putting together a daily radio show here at CBC Vancouver about how ever since Donald Trump's re-election, it feels like the pace, just the overall pace of big breaking news has accelerated. It's so ramped up. It's been nonstop. And not only that, it seems like it's more and more difficult to know just what's true, what's not true, what do we follow here. How do you feel that as a broadcaster?
It's very, very present all the time. And I think it comes from a few different places. I think this president and sort of the movement around him have become quite adept at changing the subject, about saying new, transgressive or outrageous or otherwise attention-grabbing things in order to yank people's attention away from things that they don't want people paying attention to. I also think that the president has I don't mean this in an ad hominem way, but compared to other presidents, I think he has sort of strange personal habits. He doesn't go to work until very late in the day, and he stays up very late at night. And sometimes when he's up late at night, he's up making news essentially by tweeting, by posting on social media hundreds of times into the early morning hours. Like, that's just not what we usually expect in terms of the cadence of when news breaks and when a president is doing something that's worthy of paying attention to. So, I feel like we all have to sort of hydrate and try to keep up as best we can. But the news cycle, whenever Trump is in it, is always very chaotic.
Usually went out the window a long time ago, didn't it?
Yes.
Now, okay, well, what do you see as the role of opinion in broadcast news today?
It's I think it shifts over time. And I think that in the United States in particular, we've seen the sort of boundaries flex in print media and in broadcast media, in radio and in television, in terms of how much we expect to know our anchors and broadcasters, whether we know them personally or whether we think of them as sort of objective voice of God types, and how much they're allowed to express in terms of how they feel about something rather than just what they know is true about it. I'm in the cable news business where it's very much expected that audiences will know who I am and where I'm coming from, and not only that what I'm saying is true and checkable, but also that I'll probably tell you what I think about it as I'm delivering you the news. But again, those boundaries flex over time, and there's always controversy associated with that. But at MS Now, I think we know who we are, and our audience knows who we are too.
Yeah, always controversy associated with it. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. How is being a journalist and a commentator today different from the pre-Trump era?
One of the things that's different is that Trump, for all his unusualness, as you might put it, for all the ways that he's broken norms and changed what we expect from our government and our president, he is, I think, personally a very predictable person. I consider him to be an aspiring dictator, an aspiring authoritarian leader, and more so than that, I think he's very much following the authoritarian playbook. Almost to the letter. He's not really doing anything unusual. He's doing what Viktor Orban did to the press. He's doing what other aspiring autocrats all over the world have done as they've tried to convert democracies into authoritarian countries. And so there's stuff that's going on from him that's shocking, but nothing that's coming from him is surprising. At the same time, the place where there's really big open questions, real black boxes, things where we don't know what's going to happen, is among the American people and how they're going to react and how they're going to try to save their democracy. And so I think news gathering right now has become very decentralized. We're covering stuff all over the country right now. And as far as my broadcast is concerned, I've never covered Washington less.
Oh yeah, interesting, huh? Now you're a broadcaster, but you're also an author, and your last book was Prequel: An American Fight Against Fascism, and that was a dive into some of the history of fascism in pre-World War II America. And so it's kind of pointy to call it a prequel. Tell us about that choice.
Yes, pointy is the right word. I think that there is a tendency. Whenever we come up against something in the news or in society or in life that feels really challenging, there's a tendency to think of it as brand new, to call it unprecedented, even when that's not the case. And in the case of Prequel, as Americans are talking every day all over the country now about fascist movements and would-be authoritarians and dictatorship and holding on to democracy and all this stuff, I thought it would be helpful to look at some of the struggles of our predecessors, of Americans in generations before us, who contended with some of these same fights. And all the circumstances never line up exactly. You never have history never replays itself as if it's been rewound and started again. But there are a lot of things I think that we can learn from Americans who have faced some of these same kind of threats.
Yeah, well, again, that book came out in 2023. And we got to think about just how much has happened since 2023. And we're not talking about Minneapolis and ICE, for example, as well.
Yeah.
I remember watching you, and you had a very somber, talk about, we're here, people. This is no longer theoretical. We are here right now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what have you been reflecting on it just with respect to that book, considering where we are now?
Yeah, it's something that I've been reflecting a lot on this year as we're now in the second year of Trump being back in office, and with what's happened with ICE and the murders and the masked secret police, and he's trying to build a huge network of essentially lawless prison camps, which is very unsettling. And I realized that a lot of what I have done in my work over the past 10 years is try to warn people, try to sort of put up red flags, try to say like, this isn't a good sign. We're essentially letting people know that we could be going somewhere very dark. And now my job, I think, needs to be different because we are there. Any of the warnings that we had about heading toward a potential slide into authoritarianism, well, our country is now led by an authoritarian leader. And we've switched sides in the Russia-Ukraine war, for example. I mean, like, the stuff has happened. And so once it's here, warnings are no longer sufficient. You have to think about how to try to turn things around. And that's a totally different remit in terms of thinking about what might be helpful both in the news and in history to talk about.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of breaking news every single day, just today, Hillary Clinton testified under subpoena about the Epstein files. Speaking of going somewhere dark, I mean, what's your biggest takeaway of just how the most recent news about the Epstein files has unfolded? Well,
it's just astonishing that the one person who they want to bring in and make a huge spectacle of putting on the record and dragging her before the committee to answer questions about Epstein is literally somebody who has never met Epstein. I mean, Hillary Clinton has never met Jeffrey Epstein. And to have decided, for the president's party to have decided that she's really the one they had to get on the record, while there are so many very pressing, very disturbing unanswered questions, not only about high-ranking officials in Trump's government, cabinet officials and others, but also about the president himself. The American people have proven to be sort of ungovernable on that scandal, on the issue of the Epstein files. They are not doing what they are told, and they are not falling in line with what political leaders are trying to manipulate them into in terms of how to think about that stuff. And I find that both really interesting, but also pretty promising in terms of people thinking for themselves and not being led by people who want to lead them for self-interested reasons.
Right. And let's talk about the search for truth here and the state of journalism. I mean, we've seen the Washington Post gutted, funding cuts at NPR and PBS. There's this overall lack of trust in the media. What would you say to a young person who wants to get into journalism today?
Be nimble. Before this era of again, what I would describe as sort of Viktor Orban-style war on the press. The president and his government are stepping up their attacks on the press to levels that I think compete with any sort of authoritarian regime around the world. The independent press outlets that they can't just intimidate into silence, they are trying to weaken and then have them taken over by the president's oligarchic friends. I mean, it's here. We don't need to be warning about it. We're living it. But we are also in an era of small d democratic means when it comes to what broadcasters and what reporters and what news organizations can do to try to reach people. And so the mainstream legacy media outlets, one of which I work at, are under remarkable pressure and their leadership hasn't necessarily shown incredible bravery in these moments, but people are also striking out on their own in ways that have been really effective. For example, the most recent, as I said, very disturbing news about the president and the Justice Department having withheld documents that appear to relate to accusations against President Trump concerning a 13 or 14-year-old girl, very distressing stuff. That stuff has been reported out by NPR. It has been reported out by my organization, MS Now. It has been reported out by the New York Times. But the first person who reported it was an independent journalist working on Substack. So be nimble. The business model of what it means to do journalism, what it means to do news reporting and news commentary in the United States, and I think around the world, is very, very, very fluid right now.
Good advice. Good advice. And before we let you go, you know how excited we were here on this side of the border to hear that you were a fan of heated rivalry. So are you team Shane Hollander or team Ilya Rozanov?
The answer, Gloria, is yes. I'm so into it and I'm so in withdrawal that I have started to read the books. I am a terrible person who saw the series before reading the books. I am now going back to the beginning and reading all of the books. Nothing can stop me.
Rachel Maddow, what a pleasure to speak with you, and we look forward to seeing you here in Vancouver next week.
Gloria, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
That's Rachel Maddow, an American journalist and broadcaster, and she will be giving a talk at UBC's Chan Center coming up next Thursday. Again, this is part of the LIND initiative. It's presented by the UBC School of Public Policy and Global Affairs.